My mother-in-law's goddaughter, along with her child, moved into our home. She had her eyes set on my husband and was plotting to take over our family's wealth. But I could hear her thoughts. When my mother-in-law coughed, she acted concerned, but inside she was thinking, please don't die too soon. I still don't know the bank password. I was packing for a business trip and she helped me, but inside she was thinking, this is my chance. Tonight, I'll climb into his bed and have her kick you out. In the evening, my mother-in-law and I came back from shopping. A strange woman carrying a child appeared at our doorstep with a suitcase by her feet. My mother-in-law and I exchanged glances and shook our heads. Upon seeing my mother-in-law, the strange woman tearfully called out, "Godmother." My mother-in-law was taken aback for a moment before she remembered. It's Tiffany! Tiffany Allen is my mother-in-law's goddaughter. I heard that when they were younger, the two families were close. But as Tiffany grew older, she didn't like to visit my mother-in-law's house much. A few years ago, she went to university elsewhere and completely lost contact with them. My mother-in-law quickly went to open the door. Tiffany must have been waiting for a while, as her hands were shaking as she held the child. I thought about it and kindly offered to take the child from her. Tiffany dodged, eyeing me up and down with an unfriendly look. My mother-in-law turned around and introduced me enthusiastically. This is my daughter-in-law, Jason's wife, Denise Singleton. Tiffany's face stiffened for a moment, and she secretly glared at me before shoving the child into my arms with a hint of resentment. It was baffling. Once I had settled the child, the two of us sat on the sofa in the living room chatting. Have you been home? My mother-in-law handed Tiffany a peeled apple. Yes. Tiffany's eyes darted around. My brother wouldn't let me in. What about your parents? At the mention of her deceased parents, Tiffany suddenly bowed her head and began crying. She said she had met a bad person, a man who was abusive. He had confiscated her phone, restricted her from going out, and physical abuse was a regular occurrence when he was in a bad mood. That's why she hadn't received news from home. I leaned against the wall, examining her closely. A question mark slowly formed in my mind. Given how she glared at me, she didn't seem like someone who would take abuse lying down. Tiffany said she had snuck out. She hadn't worked for a long time and was penniless. As her godmother, my mother-in-law had no reason to turn her away. After consulting with my husband and me, we allowed her to stay temporarily. Take good care of the child. I'll talk to your brother. Siblings don't have lasting feuds. Tiffany hesitated. No rush. Didn't you want to go home sooner? My mother-in-law knew that I had severe sleep issues. She specifically arranged for Tiffany and her baby to stay in the guest room farthest from the master bedroom. But the baby often cried at night. Even though they were far away, I was still awakened by his crying every day. One night, I woke up again, and knowing I wouldn't be able to sleep, I put on a robe and went to the balcony to cool off. But when I turned around, I saw Tiffany glaring with hatred and slapping the child on the head. I was stunned. I stepped forward to stop her, but by the time I reached her room, she had put on a loving mother's face. She cried fearfully upon seeing me. Did the child disturb you? I'm sorry, it's all my fault. The more I try to soothe him, the more he cries. Denise, if you want to scold someone, scold me. The child is young and doesn't understand anything. My mother-in-law heard the noise and came out too. Seeing the two of them crying, she rushed to comfort them. Tiffany kept apologizing to me. I stood there, dumbfounded. It was utterly speechless. My mother-in-law told me privately, there are signs that her brother is softening. She should be moving back in a few days. Sigh. If it weren't for her pitiful state, I wouldn't have kept her. You haven't been sleeping well lately, have you? My mother-in-law treats me well normally, considering that we wouldn't be interacting with Tiffany for much longer. I couldn't let her feel uncomfortable. However, I waited from Monday to Friday. I even waited for my husband, who had been on a business trip for half a month, to return. But there was no movement from Tiffany's brother. I work at the same company as her sister-in-law. I asked around and she told me that yesterday, the siblings met. And when her husband returned, he was in a terrible mood. He swore he would never let Tiffany back into their home. This worried me. I considered whether I should discuss it with my mother-in-law. Coincidentally, Mama came in with a bowl of chicken. I bought a roast chicken for Tiffany to nourish her body. I know you're not fond of it, but I added some wild mushrooms inside. I'll bring you a serving shortly. I answered a work call, and my mother-in-law left after setting down the bowl. The chicken I used is a special breed known for its health benefits. It's a bit pricey. Adhering to the principle of not wasting, I gritted my teeth and finished a large bowl. When I went back to the kitchen to put the bowl away, I saw Tiffany pouring the entire bowl of chicken soup down the sink. I immediately frowned. What are you doing? Tiffany didn't expect anyone to be behind her and was clearly startled, dropping the bowl from her hand. She turned around in panic and visibly relaxed when she saw it was me. I walked up quickly, frowning and pointing at the porcelain bowl. If you don't like it, you could have said so. To trample on someone else's kindness like this, your godmother would be so sad to know. Wasteful. That's wild ginseng. Facing my accusation, Tiffany showed no remorse. The baby's diaper fell in, so it was dirty, and I threw it out. So why were you nervous? I didn't quite believe her. Do I look nervous? She rolled her lips at me. I was startled by you. You were shouting. I wonder how Giyu could ever like you. I furrowed my brows uncomfortably. This wasn't the first time I had seen Tiffany's two faces. She was affectionate, and called me sister-in-law in front of my mother-in-law and Jason. But when it was just the two of us, she acted like a completely different person, with a nasty attitude. I had never understood where her hostility came from. Now, I had a vague idea.